It is midway through the 2021 NXL season, and the pro teams are at a crossroads. Next on everyone's hit list, the NXL Windy City Major.
That's what it's all about, boys. Let's go. Let's do it for each other.
For the current four teams at the top, Edmonton Impact, Russian Legion, Los Angeles Infamous, and Houston Heat, this is the chance to solidify their status during the push to the series title and continue to stay favorites for the coveted World Cup trophy. So far in 2021, Edmonton Impact has again been the pinnacle of roster strength and consistency, winning the first event and taking second at the Mid-Atlantic Open. But it was Houston Heat who rose to the occasion to take the victory at the last event after a frustrating first tournament where the three-time world champs missed Sunday in Florida for the first time in years.
They have not seen the complete package here yet.
Keep boost.
Russian Legion has found a way to stay relevant, even though they are running a tight six-man roster that still isn't at full pre-pandemic power. Infamous has been exhibiting brutal but refined aggression and will continue to be a favorite moving forward. But no one should sleep on the scrappy squads of AC Diesel and Seattle Thunder, who are earning respect this year and could factor into the finals mix at the last events of the NXL Pro season. And our defending world champs, Dynasty, showed grit and gumption with their injury-depleted roster, still managing a third-place finish in Philly. San Diego Aftermath and Tampa Bay Damage could be in the hunt on Sunday as well. Aftermath has only improved this year, but Damage, after taking third in Florida, got knocked out in the last event on Saturday. We can't forget about San Antonio X Factor, who should be hungry to win after taking a disappointing 7th and 9th place. Will the best teams continue to shine, or will a new team rise up and make history? Paintball at its highest level has never been this competitive, with this many teams with a chance to win an event. Watch all the gunfights going down on center stage at the NXL Windy City Major, September 17th to the 19th, only on GoSports.com. Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I got Marcello Margott here, San Diego Dynasty, current world champ, former world champ, all-star, and host of Play the Game podcast, one of my favorite vehicles for some storytelling. We have a little bit of news to break today concerning the future of San Diego Dynasty and Marcello. We got the event coming up here, a third event in a 4-event series. So we got a decent amount to talk about. Let's just dive right into it. Marcello, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Matty. Yeah, a lot of really exciting things coming and in the works, and couldn't be happier.
Well, I'm excited about, let's just talk about Play the Game right out the gate. Love, the fact that you got in, as I told you every single time on and off camera, love that you got into the storytelling game, just because we need more of that in the sport. So we've had some kick-ass guests on recently. So if you maybe want to just recap a couple of the guys you've had on recently, and then anyone you might have coming up on, soon, and then where people can find your and Tyler's podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every single episode has just been an absolute banger. It's been so fun to sit down with legends of the game, such as yourself. Tyler and I have been saying we need to get you back on the show, by the way. I think all the listeners are always down to listen to Matty Marshall. But we just had Rocky Cagnoni on, and that was an absolute hoot. Rocky's the man, such an icon in the game. That infamous move he made in the push video will just go down for, it's in the history books. It's solidified, right? And Rocky is the man. We had Chris Dilton and Christopher Haas from Paint Magazine on, which was fantastic. They just, released obviously the famous book. So it was really cool to get them on and just hear the stories that they had from the early 2000s when, paintball, that was a special era for the game of paintball. It really was. And might never be duplicated again. It was just, very unique and nostalgic getting to sit down and talk with them. And they sent one of those books. I know you have one. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I love looking through that thing.
Oh yeah.
And let's see a little more of the fun and controversial stuff. Before that, we had Damian Ryan, we had Tom Cole on the show. So we've been going at it, man. We've been having a blast with it, having a ton of fun, and Tyler and I are enjoying every step of the way.
And where can everybody find that?
Any podcast app. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. You can go to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel as well. So any podcasts that we do, we also air on YouTube. So you can actually see the footage. Some of it's pretty funny. We picked up this tinfoil hat specifically for the Damian Ryan episode and had to bust it out. And it was it's become a staple on the show now. Anytime anybody starts talking about some funny stuff. But yeah, you can find us all over. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you want.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys got some merch too that you can pick up off the website. And yeah, man, and again, we need good people talking about good stories, and just got a chance to touch base with Meter, and we were talking about how important telling stories are. I mean, you have this thing that's happening, this crazy charismatic thing that is pro paintball, and and we don't have the benefit of having generational knowledge about what we do. I mean, we're kind of just heading into we could call it different generations of the game, but those generations are like 5 to 10 years long. But as far as like a life generation of humans is concerned, we're just now essentially getting into that second generation. So, this isn't baseball. It's been around for 130 years, or boxing, or golf, which has been around for hundreds of years. The NFL, really since the 50s, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, we're all kind of in the trenches right now, breaking ground on the foundation for the sport still. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. So talking about that, let's kind of jump into the news we have to break here, and talking about foundations, things to build on for the future, and fundamental huge aspects of our sport as far as story is concerned. The team you play on, San Diego Dynasty, is one of those teams. Winning the World Cup, you guys are the defending World Cup champs from last year at the 20th anniversary of the team. Winning the World Cup, it was what a crazy way to end 2020 with this COVID shortened season. So obviously we can talk a little bit about that with, as that is a prelude to leading into this third event. But you do have some news to break as far as, you got to call it as it is. I mean, based on, whatever year we're talking about, you and guys like, Tyler just left, and guys like yourself are free agents sometimes. And, when you can get and keep teams of players, crucial, again, foundational members of that can really help on the field to solidify a lineup for the future, that's just one of those things. So when Tyler left, the big question with Dynasty is like, well, is anyone else going to go? How is this going to, they just came off this World Cup victory, and a lot of people were talking, behind the scenes and any chance that we got, what's the future for San Diego Dynasty? So I guess I'll let you take it away. I mean, what were your thoughts with Tyler leaving, and then what is the future for San Diego Dynasty and yourself?
Ooh, that's a lot. That's a lot there. But let's start with Tyler leaving, because it's one of my best friends. Still is, obviously. Him and I are business partners, and I've fully supported him through the move the entire way. You and I, we've both been in the game long enough, Matty. We get it. When certain offers are on the table, you'd be a bad friend to not be there for your buddy that wants to go and do something that is going to put them in a better position to support their family. And it is unfortunate. Obviously, I wish Tyler was still on the field with us. He makes our team better. He makes any team better. He went to Houston Heat and they win the event. Obviously, it's not surrounded around one player, but Tyler played phenomenal. He played outstanding. So of course I would love for him to still be here and be part of building this, but he got presented an opportunity to put his family in an immediately better position. And you can't fault a guy for that. You really can't. Especially somebody like Tyler, who's devoted his entire life, everything to the game of paintball. So, with that said, moving on past that, I think the Dynasty guys, it's kind of funny. And I don't know how much of this is my story to tell. Maybe some of them, plan on discussing it further, but there had been talks, and they had been working on bringing, a few of us in a little bit closer with the organization, because I think they recognize the long-term health of Dynasty is reliant on the younger players. You gotta have new blood, gotta have, look, Ryan is not going to be able to carry the team forever, and Alex and Yosh, there's going to come a point where they can no longer, be on the field with the team. And hopefully it's not soon. It doesn't look like it is. They're still playing. Honestly, I think they're playing the best paintball they have played, but there's going to be a time, right, where they need to be able to pass the torch to somebody and have the trust in somebody to pass that torch to. So with that, some opportunities have presented itself to have ownership of the team, and they presented Blake and myself an opportunity to work closer with Dynasty and become owners of the team. And it really didn't take too much consideration or thought. I think that's one of the biggest honors that you can be presented with in the game of paintball. Dynasty is one of the most legendary organizations of all time, arguably the most legendary organization of all time. They defined an entire era. They've done things that I don't think will be replicated. I'm not sure that it can be. And it's an honor. It's something to be really excited for. I think it brings a rejuvenation to the team, to the organization. There's a little bit of a renewed focus. Obviously, there's a lot of hunger within the camp. There's a lot of really cool things going on, awesome ideas and things that we're working on to be able to make Dynasty, what it was in the past, make it another just dominant force that can compete at the highest level every single event. And when you guys show up to an event, you're looking at San Diego Dynasty as the favorite every single time. And there's ways to position ourselves in order to do that. And I'm excited to be part of it, straight up.
Yeah, that's, as a Dynasty fan, I've never played on the team, but like I say, constantly thank your enemies, especially when you're not playing for your life or for, blood. I mean, we're kind of playing for a little bit of blood. It can hurt a little bit when you're playing paintball, but at the end of the day, everyone walks out of there okay. So when you're in a situation like that, you never really know how strong you're going to be. And this is also internally too, within the framework of a team, like having a foil, having someone that's going to push you and challenge you, and that's. And we've had this discussion constantly. Maybe we'll have it a little bit again here with the magic of what's the secret of the win. But, as a fan of Dynasty, because of all the wars I did fight against that team, it is really cool to see that team continuing to advance forward in time and to be strong. I mean, coming off a third place finish, even with an injury depleted roster at that last event. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And those are some hard fought battles, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, this is kind of good to hear. Obviously not great for anyone that was trying to pick you up on their squad for 2022. But as far as Dynasty fans is concerned, not only yourself, but to hear Blake is in the equation as well, too. I just think this is really good for, again, having a foundation moving forward and having something that Dynasty can work with. Because I feel that you and Blake, just see how you've been playing recently, and then watching what Blake just did at that event in Sacramento, playing out of position and being a leader on that squad and seeing what kind of how his game just was morphing in front of our eyes. I thought Blake was lights out at that tournament. It was blatantly apparent how good he was playing. So yeah, I think this is it's really good for the squad. I think it's good for the business side of things too. I think this is really, if you're a Dynasty fan, this is really good news, because that way that for sure, no matter what happens moving forward into the upcoming future, is okay. Well, we know that Marcello and Blake aren't going to leave, so that's for sure. And I do agree with you that, based on Ryan's MVP performance and how good we've seen Yosh and Alex play recently, I still think they got it. When you look at, you look to MMA, I'm a huge fan of mixed martial arts. We've had this discussion about MMA before too, but when you look at how complex the skill set is and the methodology it takes to be elite in that specific sport, and you kind of take it to paintball, it's one of the reasons I truly feel that, like I said, I just talked to Meter's 27. I feel like he's playing some of the best paintball he's ever played, and it's because he understands the complexity of how his game fits in with the overarching macro game when you look at it from that 30,000 foot perspective, based on the framework of how you work in with your team. So yeah, man, I think this is really good for you. It's good for Dynasty. It's good for the fans. It's good for the sport. So I'm excited, man. This is some good news, unless you were somebody trying to get Marcello on your squad for 2022.
There's some really exciting stuff coming too from the Dynasty camp, which can't quite talk about yet, but I'm pumped for it. I'm pumped for all the ideas. I mean, the guys are just straight up innovators, whether it was innovating how to play the game, with being the first to run and shoot, for the first like young athletes in the game, to style, to fashion, to what they're doing now with, Alex and Oliver and Yosh with Hormesis and Field One. I mean, just straight up innovators. So the ideas and the think tank, I should say, in Dynasty is really blowing up. It's booming. And so it's fun to be part of. It's fun to, be able to contribute to, because obviously, pursuing the business side of paintball is something I've done my entire career, and that's how I've wanted to position myself. And so to be in this position to do it with these guys just makes it that much more special. And like I said, very exciting. You guys are going to be stoked on some of the stuff that we have coming.
Yeah. And I know there's some stuff that can't be talked about, but I know this has kind of got out there a little bit, at least as far as the stories are concerned. Stories motivate and stories define things. And the fact that no one's really truly heard the Iron Kid story, I think, is a little sad. And so the fact that that's going to be a documentary that's in pre-production right now, and Dan Napoli's looks like going to be the storyteller for that. I'm excited about that project, especially with, like you said, the famous book just dropped, And so that's something I'm pretty stoked on. But yeah, it's just really good. It's good things, man. It's good for the stability of the sport moving forward. Because anytime you have a transitionary period with a team like Dynasty, I'm going back a couple seasons ago, didn't before they took over Field One, and I didn't really know how things were going to shake out. I just was hoping that, because you hear this story and see it so often. And that's what I was going to say. Kind of, if you have any advice for up and coming teams that are trying to keep things together, or players that are kind of making their way. I know it's just a handful of guys here and there, but people, but even though that may be the reality, it's definitely the dream of a lot of people coming up. And who knows when somebody may find this interview. I mean, because you have been having to wade through these waters, and there aren't a lot of old people to go consult on this. You're now one of those people. So do you have any advice for people coming up or teams coming up the ranks, and how to wade through these treacherous waters and find a way to swim strongly through them?
Yeah, it's tough, Matty. No bullshit aside, if you don't have the money to pay people to stay together, more than a competing team might pay to poach your best player, the number one thing you have to have is you have to build a culture where everyone believes in each other. If you don't believe in each other in an organization, you're going to want to leave. But if you believe in each other, no matter how bad it might be at the time, you're going to want to stick it out more times than not. So, past the monetary issues, it's building that culture of belief amongst one another. That truly is the foundation of it. I think you see when players from those up and coming teams start to get picked off, it's usually because they've started to finally lose belief. They come in with all these hopes, like, no, we're a bunch of friends, we're a bunch of buddies, we're going to do this together, we're going to take down the evil empire, we're going to beat Impact, Houston Heat, Dynasty, Russians. And then they don't do it. And for the first year, maybe first 2 years, they still believe that, no, we're getting better, we're making progress. But once that starts to break, and you can tell when it breaks, you can see it in their body language, you could see it in their pits and how they are talking to each other in matches. Once it starts to break and the belief with each other is gone, that's when teams start to fall apart, and players go to other places, and that's a wrap. So for me, it's those two things.
Yeah, it's funny you say that belief is of utmost importance. When I had, again, Meter Ninos on our last show, and I kind of took him through his career. Okay, starting at the very beginning, and I asked for a lesson, like a little brief lesson from each very point of his career, like each chapter. And the very first lesson was belief. Starting out in the very beginning, just kind of belief in himself that he could do it. If he could go back and tell himself, hey, kid, here's what I think about, your adventure you're about to go on. Like, the very first lesson is belief. And, we talk a lot about the gifts of the game and on this show. And I know you talk a lot about this on your show, obviously, play the game and the whole culture side of things and how important that is. You've traveled around the world. You've seen that firsthand, and how much we share that with, because, the first thing you learn when you start traveling the world is everyone's the same, essentially at their core. Everyone cares about their family. They care about their passions. They love to eat and drink good things. For the most part, everyone's the same. But that belief is of fundamental importance as far as trying to make a run at things. But it is incredibly difficult. Let's kind of jump in, because I can't keep you here all night. But let's jump in and talk about, speaking about that specific part and that side of it right now, teams kind of coming up. I mean, we have a lot going on at this next NXL event here from a story perspective. And I think I kind of want to throw this specific story at you right away, just because they're ranked 5th overall. It's a team you're pretty familiar with, not super familiar with. I mean, you are pretty familiar with these guys, but they've been making waves. They took a 5th place and a 6th place, and they're a pretty exciting team to watch right now. For me, they're in a bracket with Infamous, New York Extreme, Energy Elite, and Uprising. It's Seattle Thunder, but this is a team that's had some guys picked apart from them throughout the years, but they seem to have a pretty stout lineup. They've been incredibly successful in getting to Sunday. They've only lost one game in the prelims through 2 events. But what are your thoughts on Seattle Thunder and them moving forward? Because to me, that's a team that I'm like, dude, Corey, try to keep this team together however you can moving forward, because if they just had a little bit of time, but it's going to be tough for them, and a lot's going to come down to what happens in these next 2 events.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, hats off to Corey and what, not only what he's doing with the organization, but how he's personally been playing. I think that's a big thing of belief. I think you got a group of guys, a group of players together that have bought into the program 100%, and they've got a chip on their shoulder, and they're grinding, working hard. And I think you see that in their performance on the field. So, yeah, I'm impressed by them. You know, they have played really well so far this year. And I guess moving forward, you know, I know going into the second event, that was my thing. I said, okay, well, let's see how they follow up the first event. And they followed it up. You know, they made it to Sunday, and we actually played them Sunday morning, and it was a really close match. You know, I think it was a 1-point game. So they're right there. They're knocking on the door. And, you know, who knows? It's one of those, they're one of those, that group of guys where it's like, I don't know if I would even recommend, you know, sometimes you recommend, okay, all they need is one more experienced player. You know, that might mess with what they have going on. Like whatever they have going on is working. They're playing really good team ball, and they have a good mix of like knowing when to attack, knowing when not to attack. Yeah, so we'll see for sure.
Just real quick, in these brackets, who do you think, we're always having this discussion, which is the toughest bracket? With this one, I think it is up in the air a little bit. I think you guys have a pretty tough bracket. But, you know, you bracket A with Impact, Damage, Revo, Outlaws, Level. You guys are in the bracket with Russians, yourselves, AC Diesel, Ironman, and ML Kings. And then you have Infamous, Thunder, New York Extreme, Energy Elite, and Uprising. And then the last bracket, Heat, Aftermath, X Factor, DMG, AC Dallas. Just off the top of your head, like, what do you think as far as difficulty level is concerned? I mean, which of those do you think has the highest level of difficulty? Obviously, it's an argument because it's who's going to show up. So it's not always.
It's all about what tier. Yeah, right? It's all about what tier 2 A and B teams show up, right? That's the tough bracket kind of usually gets decided at the event, depending on those tier 2, you know, tier 2A, tier 2B teams. Yeah, I mean, they're all hard. They all got good teams. It's all about who comes most prepared, really. And the teams that have more experience typically come more prepared because they know how to break down the field better, you know, so they do a better job in practice of coming up with better game plans. And so, you know, it's not just about who played more or who did this more, just who's most prepared, right? Who's most prepared to show up at the event and throw out your game plans against another team's game plans and actually execute those game plans. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if any one of those brackets stands out as a tougher one than the other to me.
Well, maybe if we go down and talk just about a few of these, the teams sitting at the lower tiers and who you think, based on, obviously this is layout contingent too. I know you've looked at that layout quite a bit and thought about it and maybe got some spins on it here, but if we just kind of look at, so with Impact, Damage, and Revo, so Revo needs to really step up because they had such a disappointing event. So Damage and Revo are in very similar situations. They're teams that people really thought that they were going to have a big second event, and they really didn't. You know, Revo and Damage were, you know, basically had two of the worst events they've had in recent memory at this last event. So they're going to be really hungry. The fact that they are sitting right next to each other in that second and third place in that bracket, but then the Outlaws and Level, you know, Level just came off of the Astra where they had a kind of not the worst look in the world. The Outlaws also they continue to be slightly better. Are they ready? I don't know. That depends. But the fact that Damage and Revo are going to be so hungry, and then they're in with Impact, that could be interesting. Your thoughts real quick on that bracket.
Yeah, I think Damage will bounce back for sure. I mean, that was a strange event for them at the last one. There's no reason they shouldn't be playing on Sunday. There's absolutely no reason for that with the roster they have and the program they have. So I look at them and Impact to be the two that come out of that. Revo's going to have a tough time. I mean, I guess in a way they've underperformed, but they haven't been at full strength. You know, they've been missing guys in and out events. It seems like there's been a little lack of commitment from their camp. I could be speaking out of turn. I don't know. It's just what it seems like from the outside. You constantly hear that this player's not here for this event, that player's not there for that event. And what does that do, Matty? That starts to break the belief in each other, right? When there's you don't have that cohesion, it starts to kind of crack into that belief. And again, I could totally be speaking out of turn. This is just my opinion from the outside. I could be completely wrong. I like those Revo guys. You know, I always give them their respect when we play them. They play us really well. They are a great team, but for some reason they haven't been putting it together this year. And from the outside perspective, that to me, that's why. But yeah, beyond that, I look for impact and damage to come out of that this event.
And then into that.
And who is the other team? You said, Matty, who is the
Outlaws and Level?
Outlaws and Level. Yeah, you know, those teams are just gonna. I mean, Level beat Heat at the last event. Heat was kind of going away from that starting five. They were playing both lines. It was their fourth match. They had already won all three. They were in no matter what, you should say. I think they had the number one seed even locked up. It's just so tough to crack the armor of these experienced teams. So I just really feel like Level and Outlaws are going to struggle to come out of a bracket like that. That's tough for them for sure.
Yeah, that's a really hard bracket for them. And then with Russians still running a pared down roster, I hear some rumors that they might be picking maybe potentially some people up. They couldn't confirm or deny those. So we'll see. Could just
they
be
need bodies.
6 guys they've had. They need bodies, yeah. But they might be getting Karslev back, but I guess that's still like 50-50. I don't think Kirill's going to be there, which is unfortunate for them. And then, you know, Diesel looks tough, man. Diesel's deep. Diesel's hungry. Diesel has threats. Diesel's probably only going to get better. They may, you know, maybe pop down here or there, but as long as, like you said, belief, I think that team has a lot of belief in themselves. They put the work in. And then Ironman have had, considering they've been on a little bit of a rebuild again, not the finishes that they've had to have. They're down at 14th place overall after their first win in 10 years, the beginning of last season. They're going to be hungry. They have some threats too. I like that roster. And then you have ML Kings with all those new guys, lots of aggressive guys on that squad. I think that's an interesting, the Russians have been so consistent with those 6 guys. And then with Diesel, Ironman, ML Kings, Diesel to me is they proved to be in a slightly different echelon than Ironman and ML Kings, at least through 2 events. But I don't know. This one could be a little interesting. I mean, you guys have continued to look so good. Let's talk about this. Again, we only got about 10 minutes left, but how healthy are you guys? That was kind of the big concern coming off that last event.
Yeah, I mean, we just started dropping like flies at the last event. That was crazy. I don't know how that happened. Though. I mean, we went into the event with like 12 guys, and then all of a sudden we were playing with 5. Every knock on wood, you know, everyone is fairly healthy right now. So, you know, barring any, we are going back up to Sacramento. You know, so we're going to have a brutal practice in the heat against Impact. So we got to get through another weekend, and then, you know, hopefully we show up at the event with all of our guys.
Well, is Dalton going to be back?
Dalton's back, and that's that's one of the biggest additions to any team. Dalton is, I can't say enough good things about Dalton Vanderbilt, and he doesn't promote himself. He doesn't get the shine like he should. But I mean, Dalton is a top 5 player. You know, when he's on, he's just truly one of the best attackers. He's and even more than just an attacker now. He can play the 2 very well. He understands the pace. He understands communication, teamwork. He gets the whole game. You know, he's so incredibly experienced. So having him back, you know, him and I have got to play quite a bit together, and it's been amazing. So knock on wood, we got to keep his leg right. You know, maybe we'll just sit him out this weekend. And, you know, just not play him too much. Let him rest until the event. No, but yeah, Dalton's good. He's back. So that's amazing. Cause it was scary. You know, I was rooming with him at the last event, and I mean, I thought we lost him for the season, you know, like he was in a lot of pain. His knee was definitely bugging him. And, you know, I'm just glad that he was able to work through it. I know he was doing a lot of physical therapy, a lot of stuff to try to get back, and to have him back on the field is fantastic.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. But your thoughts real quick on Diesel, Ironman, and ML Kings, and the Russians too, if you've heard any more about if they're going to get anybody else.
Yeah, Diesel, Ironman, ML Kings, they're all viable threats, right? And again, it's going to be about consistency with them. They haven't proved, none of those teams have quite proved total consistency. Now, Ironman, you know, they did win an event last year, but their roster looks a little bit different now. I do know they're working their butts off. They're practicing. They have a great facility to be able to do all the drills and make sure that they're prepared. Diesel, same thing, you know. ML Kings, they're like kind of the distant team that actually has been playing great. I know at World Cup last year, they gave us an amazing game. You know, they definitely stepped up there, but to me, I'm looking at the Russians. You know, the Russians, it's which Russian Legion is going to show up, because they need bodies, like I said, and you can see on Sunday or even late Saturday, if the conditions are, hot and humid and they're running that same 5 and it's a high scoring field, which a lot of the layouts have been, minus the Orlando event, where you're playing back-to-back points and you have 5 to 7 games and, things of that nature, 12, 14-point matches. They're just tired. They're just tired. Like it's a really difficult thing to train and condition yourself for that environment. So if they have a few extra bodies that they're picking up to where when they are beating teams in the prelims, Malloy can get some rest, Smotrov can get some rest, the guys can get some rest, then fantastic. Then that's great for them. So, and not fantastic for everybody else, I guess, because it gives their guys rest. It gives them a chance to be at 100%. And when those guys are at 100%, they're nasty. So, them getting bodies, I'm curious to see, I don't know if you're going to have this news soon or what, or when they're going to release that, but, that's something that I think the whole league is probably keeping an eye on. Are they going to have bodies? Are they going to be able to have the depth to go deep on Sunday? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they've done so well with the guys that they have had. I mean, it's just so impressive when you have a situation where, okay, they finally get their starting 5 dialed in. That's a team that's going to win tournaments. And then they, with COVID, lose Karslev, lose Kirill, and some coaches, and it's just all over the place, and it's crazy. And we didn't even, are the Russians even going to be able to make it over? I mean, it's a legendary team we're talking about. So, that's another one of your thank your enemies type situation. I, did not like the Russian Legion when they first came into the game, being raised on, Rocky IV and Ivan Drago, killing Apollo Creed, wanted to take down the Russian juggernaut back when they were wearing pajama pants and not able to shoot left-handed. But over time, I just learned to really respect those guys in that program, and they've become a fixture in the game. So the fact that, that they built themselves up again to be this juggernaut, and then just based on circumstance, all of a sudden had to pair back to the 6 guys. But it has been very admirable that they are still ranked 2nd place overall with the 4th and a 5th place. We're undefeated in the prelims. They did lose to Aftermath at the last event. Undefeated in the prelims at this last one, and they've looked as good as they have, and that's just got to tip your hat to the guys that are still on that squad. But it still is a conversation piece, man. Like you said, can they keep it going? I mean, do you think, Marcel, let me ask you this, based on your expertise and what you see on this layout? I know you still have, things always do evolve on layouts, but you kind of know right away. I mean, do you think we're going to see a ton of points on this layout, which the Russians like to play a ton of points, but if they can only get 6 guys there, that might make it a little bit harder for them, depending on how things go and the heat.
Yeah, it's not really a lock the field down kind of layout. There's ways to shoot people off the break, give yourself a quick advantage. So I think you could definitely see a lot of quick points, which is going to equal to higher scoring matches. Granted, somehow, some way, teams find a way to slow it down at the event, whether it's mentally or what. Crazy. But I do think it's going to be a pretty fast layout. And I mean, the Russians they're just nasty, and they're probably more conditioned than 95% of the league. So for them to be getting tired it's also their style, right? They play a higher pace than any other team. So their style hasn't helped their situation lately. But yeah, I mean, them being 2nd overall, I mean, that again shows, even with that depleted roster, not having their coaches, they still have a program that they come and they execute, and they have a way that they train, things that they work on, things that they put focus and attention to during their practices that pay dividends. That's why, you could go back to the start of the Russians when they first came over and were wearing the pajamas. You would know the superstars on the team, but as soon as one of those superstars either left or wasn't around, somebody else would fill into those shoes. And for us, it would be like, oh, this is a brand new player. What's he going to do? But no, they're already like 10-year veterans that have been with the organization for a long time, going through the process. And now, oh my God, they're like almost as good as the person that just stepped away. So, that organization they really have it right. They do an excellent job of getting their players prepared, and they're always dangerous. They're always going to be a threat. So, that's one of those games that when you have them in your bracket in the prelims, if you're one of the top tier teams, you're going to play them late Saturday. And, you know that's going to be a game that really tests you. It's like, okay, how ready are we to win this event? You know, how ready are we to go up against some of the better teams on Sunday? So those are the matches I look most forward to. You know, late Sunday, you start getting that feeling of Sunday paintball. You start getting that, you know, the stands are kind of packed, you know, the moment feels a little bit bigger. It feels like, okay, now we're getting into, are we prepared? Are we not? Like, what's the vibe like? Let's go into this match. Let's see what we're up against and see where we're at, you know, and see if our preparation has been correct.
Well, yeah, and it's just been interesting to see Smotroff over here just on the adventure of dreams. You know, it reminds me of when we were in our mid to early 20s, just traveling around Europe for months at a time, just teaching clinics and meeting people and hanging out. And but he's been kind of, you know, trying to spread that, you know, as they call it, the red wave, that school that they've been doing. It's just interesting. It's an interesting take on paintball. You want to learn from as many masters as you possibly can. That's why I'm a big fan of what you guys have been doing with BKI. The fact you have so many diverse looks and different guys in that side of things. How was the summer? I don't know if I touched base with you since, at least on air, since the summer camp. Maybe we could just hit pause real quick. So do have a little bit of time here. But how was that? Like, how was that vibe with the whole COVID thing? And it's just been such a weird year. It seemed like you guys still got an awesome turnout. And I know that's been like a big signpost and a fun event for you at all times. But I can't remember if we've touched base on air since then. Have we touched base on air since then?
And no, we haven't, dude. I like hardly get a seat at the glorious Go Sports table now. It's crazy. I miss you guys.
Please. You're like one of my go-to guys. But I mean, you know, I try to get you in as much as possible.
I'm always the last minute guy. Yeah, you always ask me when someone else bails on you. I never get like this is the Marcello show. It's always, hey Marcello, can you help me? I'm in a bind. The other guy bailed.
That is not always true. For instance, I had 2 shows today. One was Meter, and then now we had to do you because we did have some news. But, you know, we drink some beers occasionally. We do hang out. I mean, we have played a bit of golf. You have been skipping out on me on some golf, though, which I'm wondering, like, are you just trying to get better without, like, what's the deal with that? So, I mean, you're throwing at me. I got to throw a little bit at you here.
I'm going undercover until I'm you know, really dialed in. Yeah, I'm sick of going and showing up to the course and not being prepared. We talk about preparation. Like, I don't like doing anything if I'm not prepared. That's just how I am. I don't care if we're playing video games. I'm not trying to show up to the competition if I know that I haven't been preparing properly. It's I don't know if that's for better or worse, but it's with absolutely everything. Like, I have to be prepared. I'm a preparer. But yeah, anyway.
Just hold on, just real quick though. I played. I went up to Long Beach and played a round with Josh Howe last weekend, and he was kind of asking about the San Diego paintball players as far as golf. He's like, "So who do you think would win? You know, between such and such and this one?" I was like, "I'll tell you what, Marcello just got started. He's not there yet, but if you give him a little bit of time, because that's the dude that, you know, he's actually taking it. He got into it and he got into it. Bought some nice clubs." Goes to the range, kind of, you know, is diligent about his skills to try to improve. I was just give him a little bit of time, but I would like to see that match. I think, I don't know, it'd be interesting. I think Hal would take you though at this point in time. If I got to be honest.
Yeesh. I haven't seen him play. I don't know how long he's been playing. So I mean, for me to run my mouth on that,
longer than you,
that makes no sense.
Longer than you,
longer than me. Yeah, so he's probably got the edge. We'll see.
But anyway,
I will say.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I will say, I do have at least 1 or 2 holes around that are just so phenomenal. I'm like, if I could do this, I would be on tour, I think. You know, it's crazy.
Sounds like you're playing golf, bro. That's like saying that's like the paintball guy that goes out and is like, bro, dude, I roasted that one dude off the break, and then I won that. I quickly wrapped around and I got that other kill, dude. And it's those points that keep you coming back when you first
I bunkered Ryan Greenspan at a clinic.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. 100%. I beat but it's those points and those. It's like with golf. Golf is incredibly difficult. Yeah. Paintball is incredibly difficult.
You
know, baseball is incredibly difficult. I don't know why, but I love games that are incredibly difficult. And it's just one of those things that you hit that one shot and you just, you know, that coast to coast epic shot that you'll just remember for the next 3 months. And that's the story that you're going to tell later over beers when you're hanging out with your buddies. You're going to be like, yeah, dude, I roasted Ryan Gray, bunkered Ryan Greenspan in that one clinic.
Yeah, that's how good I am at golf. Not all my bad shots. It's only my good shots. That's how good I am.
That's why it's 18 holes, bro. That's why at NXL, that's why
Yeah,
it's not race to
yeah,
one. You know what I'm saying? You got to play some paintball, dude.
totally. Yeah, totally. All right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
let's jump back in. We were so
yeah.
summer camp.
Mhm.
Summer camp. I don't know if I talked to you since the last summer camp, which was, kind of truly in the heart of COVID, but we've had 2 amazing back-to-back summer camps, 2020 and 2021. Truly one of my favorite events of the year, hands down. It's unmatched. The players that we work with, one, are just they're dynamite. I mean, truly phenomenal. And so many of them, watching their evolution as they've come from the very first summer camp to the different combines and all the way to this last summer camp. I mean, I cannot wait to see these players on the pro field. I guarantee you that some of them are going to be on the pro field, and it's just special to watch their growth and their commitment, their dedication, how hard they work, and get to hang out with them in that capacity, where it's all paintball 24/7. During the day, we're grinding, we're working on different parts of the game. At night, we're going over film, we're hanging out. We have a private chef that cooks up the best meals. We're having a good time, telling stories, playing pranks on each other. I mean, it's really a fun event for all ages. That's one of the number one things that I get asked. We'll get some, 30 to 40-year-old people, players that will hit me up and say, "Hey, am I too old to come to this thing?" I'm like, absolutely not. Like, it's perfect. We have a great mix of older and younger, and it's fantastic. It's such a great event. So this summer camp was awesome. We do a tournament on the Sunday, the final day. Will say this is the 4th year in a row that I have won the tournament as the coach, which is pretty fantastic. Take that, Ryan Greenspan. But it's a lot of fun. And actually, Nick is a fantastic coach. For those of you out there that don't know much about Nick Laval, because he also is somebody who doesn't really push himself on social media and stuff like that. He is a great paintball mind. Just a kind of an undercover, fantastic paintball mind, and is really doing a great job of starting to train the next generation. So shout out to our team. The BKI team that Anthony and Lori put together is fantastic, all across the board. So talk about belief, believing in each other. I know when we go to these events, we all look at each other and we believe in the way that we're teaching. We believe in the way that we're building the organization, the meetings that we have about how are we going to help turn these players into professionals. There's 100% belief with all of the, quote unquote professors and whatnot, all of the instructors and the ownership. So major shout out to Anthony and Lori at BKI for handpicking everyone, and putting this together, because we have a great group, and the players, dude, Matty, I cannot wait. You are going to be calling these names. I guarantee it. I've
already called some of them, not on necessarily pro teams, but flirted with a little pro action here or there. But every single dude that anytime that you or Ryan or basically any of the professors that have been like, "Hey, keep an eye on this guy." And then we've been to some of these events, and I'll see these guys end up on the divisional field. Some of those guys are really good. I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing, and they're young enough that, I don't expect to see them in the pro ranks, because like we talked about, paintball is very much like mixed martial arts. It takes a lot to kind of get the skill set that you need. I mean, when you go and watch the divisional, like we're working on some divisional content right now for Go Sports that Art's cutting up. I'm doing some voiceover for him. You look at the difference between the different divisions on Sunday afternoon and then into semi-pro and then to pro. It's not an athleticism thing, really. I mean, it's not really a form thing. I mean, form is important. Form is fundamental. Form will help make things easier on you. But when I watch Adam Gomez play and slaughter people this year for Seattle Thunder, I'm not like gushing about how perfect his form is. Like, he's not the fastest dude. Mm-hmm. He's not the smallest guy. He whips his gun around real quick. He's obviously got a great shot. He's a good gunfighter, but it's not his form. It's the decisions that he makes in his mind. It's how he plays the game. Yosha's not the fastest guy. Yosha's not been elite for 20 years because he's the fastest, smallest guy out there. Yosha's just an absolute beast when it comes to playing the game in the mind. Obviously, you wrote a book called Paintball IQ, and that's also a big part of your game as well too, even though you're pretty athletic. But so that's the decisions that I've seen some of these kids make, and the fact that they have chips on their shoulders, mm-hmm. which will allow them to ride the power of your persona to go forward into these very difficult tests and trials. So yeah, man, I'm a big fan of what you guys have been doing. I think it's going to be cool to see some of these guys on pro teams eventually, if they could keep it going, because it is very difficult in that deep water of teams or players trying to make pro teams and then teams trying to tier up to that pro level. So, I mean, do you have any names that you want to throw out, guys you think have really good chances, or you don't want them to get stolen from other teams?
I mean, I don't think they're going to get stolen from other teams. I don't think they're going to get stolen from other teams. But I just, you know, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you know the kids that I work with. I'd rather not give them a big head. They haven't quite earned that yet to be getting shouted out at here, you know, here on Go Sports. But there's a good circle of players, and you know what I keep saying to them is it's gonna be whether or not they stick with it, right? You know, these players are young. They're, you know, 14, 15, 17. They're really young. And so if they stick with it and stick with the process, they're no doubt in my mind are going to be on a top level team and be a top level player. But you and I both know a lot happens between those ages and, you know, your early 20s. Other things come into play, whether it's school, girlfriend, work, you know, there's other things that might take priority. And, you know, fair enough. That's I saw it happen growing up with Aftermath. You know, only a few of us continued, but I mean, every single player on the early Aftermath team could have become a high level pro. You know, it was really just the ones that stuck with it and wanted to truly continue down that path. You know, maybe I'll give a little bit of shine. I got to say to like the youngest workers that I work with consistently, they come out and they play on a divisional team with me as well. You know, Colton Dahl, Colt 45. Everybody knows Colton. He's 14 years old. It's unbelievable watching this kid move around a field. His fundamentals are better than a majority of people. Like watching him go toe to toe and gunfight with grown men is hilarious because he just bullies them, you know? And with him, it's going to be a lot of him just getting that confidence in himself, right? Getting the confidence to make big moves on the field. And I've seen him, you know, at the summer camp, I've seen him at certain events really like pull off these moves where I sit back and I go, how did you think of that? You know, like your thought process there was really perfect. You know, you really, really did a great job of dissecting that scenario. And so as he gets older and gets more confidence and just more maturity in his body and more just physical ability to get around the field, I mean, the kid's going to be nasty. You know, and then another one is Ben Sloffer. He's just dynamite. This kid was in a similar position as Colton for many years. You know, I met both these kids out at, and got to give Dave Pando a major shout out at Level Up Sports in Ohio, like 5 years ago. You know, I met these kids and neither one of them could, you know, hardly hold a gun. They were just little tiny youngsters. Right. And now Ben has kind of matured into his body. He's on the high school wrestling team. He's an athlete. He's an absolute athlete. He's almost as tall as me now, you know, which isn't saying too much. I'm about 5'10" on a good day. But he has really come to his own and yeah, it's like average, right? I'm like right there in the middle. I'm not tall, not short.
That's above average.
Right there,
5'10" is above average. I mean, you're not 6'1", but you are average. Definitely, you're not
5'10" is average.
For what? A European? Northern European? Yeah, 5'10". I think 5'9" is average for a human being. Let's see if we go. Go ahead. Continue your talk track. I'm
above average. I'll take it. I'll take it. Above average. Mm-hmm. But this kid, Ben, again, he's a little older than Colton. You know, they came from a similar camp, but I think Ben is up next. I mean, I definitely have my eyes on him. I'm excited to be able to work with him. He plays on, like I said, the team that I coach out of New York, Wrecking Crew. And at this last event, he actually had a really special performance, Matty. I mean, for me, what I look at is how you respond in big moments, you know? When the game's on the line, what do? I don't really care so much about stats unless it really matters. I care about the stats in those high pressure situations. And whether or not you're winning or losing, right? For me, it's the intangibles. And, you know, we were down a point against a team that in this division, you were allowed to have a semi-pro player on your team. We had one, Trent Nita, which again, he plays for the Hurricanes. That kid is really close as well. My goodness, he's a baller, total stud.
Yeah.
He's already well
Love
on
me
his
some
path.
Trent Nita.
You know, he's well on his path. He's chopping at the bit. And the other team had a player from New England Wreckage. I'm not sure his name. Apologize for that. But in any case, we were down 2-1 in this match, and the game is developing. We don't have much time on the clock. Ben goes down, gets a couple kills. We lose bodies, comes down to a 1-on-1, and it's him against the semi-pro player from New England Wreckage. Ben steps up, wins the point, ties the game. All right, there you go, kid. That's what's up. There you go. That's a big moment for you.
Yeah.
So we have 45 seconds, something like that on the clock. We play the point. Ben goes down the field, shoots a couple bodies. It looks like we could potentially get the point, but we don't. So it goes into overtime. Overtime, we lose 2 bodies off the break, pretty much off the break. Trent being one of them, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a 3-on-5. This is a disaster. Okay, let's go. You got to show me something. And you got to give a shout out to this kid Tanner, who also came over. He goes down, he makes a big move down the snake side, shoots a couple bodies, trades with one of them. An explosion goes off. It becomes a 2-on-1 against Ben, the kid I'm talking about, right? One of the 2 is the semi-pro player from New England Wreckage again. So he's somewhere in the back center. Ben's on the Dorito side. The opponent on the Dorito side is making his way down the field. And Ben, he's an attacker. He usually just goes forward. And so to see this poise and this composure in this moment was, to me, just special. He retreated back to the Dorito 1, which was inset from the Dorito 3 that he was at. And he knew all weekend, these players were just coming down trying to trade bodies with that Dorito 3. Sure enough, the other guy tries to run down, bunker Ben. Ben's not there anymore. He shoots him, tucks in. Now it's a 1-on-1 with the semi-pro player. We're in overtime in the finals to win the event. Kid goes down, wins the 1-on-1, hits the buzzer.
Is on the line. Marcello's undefeated record is on the line, for Christ's sake.
No, Matty, this isn't summer camp. This is at this is a actual legitimate regional event out in Connecticut, the OPS event.
Even more.
Yeah.
Even
so
more
this kid
pressure.
flies. Yeah. Even more pressure. That's what I'm saying. This isn't summer camp fun. So Ben was also on my team at summer camp, and we won that, which was fantastic. Which was, great. Got to say, he wasn't the MVP of that one. Couldn't give it to him. We had another player that was just playing dynamite, totally out of his mind. Shout out to Andrew Wyatt, another kid. My goodness, that kid's only been playing 2 years, and he's so good. But anyway, this was a legitimate regional series, with a ton of really good teams that we beat in D3. They have won D2 NXL events, right? So it's it's a big moment. There's good players here, and again, overtime, 2-on-1. This kid makes a great move, shoots the first body, goes down the field, wins the 1-on-1 against a semi-pro player to win the event in overtime. I was just so proud, so blown away. That's a huge moment. You put the whole team on your back there, and granted, the whole team played phenomenal. I don't want to take away anything that the team did to get us to that point, and how everybody really bought into what we were doing and the practice that we had and all of that. But this kid really stepped up in a big moment. And for me, those are the intangibles that you can't teach. You can't teach players how to be clutch or how to show up when it matters most. Yeah. You just can't teach that. That's a confidence thing. That's something that's built at home, long before you step on the field. That is something that is part of your DNA. It is who you are. It is how you've been raised. You can't teach that. It's just you either have it or you don't.
I totally agree. Let me say I agree 90%. And the reason why I agree, because I always say the same thing. I'm like, there's certain things you can't teach. You can improve speed. You can't teach speed. You either are or not born with. You can't teach height. By the way, I Googled it, and 5'9" is the average for the United States.
Damn.
If you lived in Europe, so Germany is 5'11", Norway 5'11". So they, tall people in Northern Europe, but for the United States, you are definitely above average. 5'9" is the average. But yeah, Amazing. You can't teach height. You are either as tall as you are or you are not. That is it. I'm sorry. That is just how it is. You can't really teach speed. You can improve upon your speed. You can get faster, but we all know that one guy like Dan Holiday would always joke that he would, hey, let me get in the fastest man contest for the league because I come from like purebred speed. My pops used to show up at 45 smoking cigs, drop a cig, dust all the kids, come back with his lit cigarette like it was nothing. I mean, like there are certain things you can and cannot teach. And I do feel that you can improve upon, but the toughness side of things, like I feel like some people can go through things that will make them tougher. This is, again, one of the reasons that I love paintball, because this game forces you to be involved in those situations that are going to bring it out of you. So even if you don't always have it, if you play paintball long enough, that's why when you said wrestling, that's another sport, jujitsu, another sport, whatever, any football. Like if you do certain things that are very physically humbling, where somebody else can ragdoll you if they're a bigger, stronger person, but if you can use leverage to then, exert your will upon somebody that's bigger than you. But anyway, if you get enough of those situations, the toughness can come out of you. And so I do feel that because paintball has that ability, because you do it so much and it's hard and humbling and you lose more than you win, and you go out there, and if you're willing to engage in those instances enough, that it will bring out, it's like speed, again, you can't teach height, but if you're not that fast, you can get faster. If you're a bigger person, you can lose weight, you can become stronger. There are things that can, so I feel that as a human soul, that paintball makes you tougher. So I'm glad, this is why I love seeing these kids in this stuff, because but you're right though. I mean, some people are just tougher than other people, man. It is what it is. And we can bullshit around all we want.
I'm with you, though. I
believe in all that. You know what I'm saying? But I've seen it before.
Yeah, we could go down the whole slippery slope of course, at the end of the day, it's actually all teachable. When I say like you can't teach it, I guess I'm referring to by the time we get them in whatever state they are at, at the paintball field, it's all about, I mean, we're taught everything from a young age, right? So you can go down that street. And what kind of adversities individuals go through definitely shapes who they are and how they respond to things. And paintball, you're right. I mean, I think for me, starting paintball so young is really what helped train the type of person that I was, because you're right. You're put through so much different adversities. How are you going to respond to it? And so it's definitely a sport that if you play it from a young age, it can definitely make you more tough. It can definitely make you respond better to adversity and different situations. And I mean, shoot, I'm still learning from the game. There's so many things with dealing with different personalities and different pushback. And I mean, losing in paintball for some reason feels so much worse than losing in anything else. It's like so personal sometimes. It forces you to grow and learn and absolutely, kind of shape into a different form. So yeah, you could go down the rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Which, I mean, we've definitely been down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Let's talk about, which is totally fine because that's what these shows are about. But let's talk about these last two brackets before I let you go. There's a lot of story in here. Infamous, Thunder, Extreme, Energy Elite, and Uprising. Let's start there. Infamous has been on they haven't been on a run. They haven't won events, but they've looked so much better. And I really like the roster that Travis has put together. I think that's a team that could win an event. Obviously, they made it to the finals at the first event.
They should have won that
in that
event.
bracket. Yeah, I mean, it was. So talk to me about.
They should have won that event. I mean, they should have won the first event. They should have a win this year. I cannot believe how they gave that game back. They've been playing great. They have players. They, believe in each other. They have that belief that we're talking about. But they absolutely gave away. And of course they all know it. They know it. I'm sure it hurt them more than anyone else can say, So
there's a 1-2 game.
It's tough.
1-2. It's a 3-point game.
I know.
Dude, I know. Those are those ones.
It was a 5-on-2. 5-on-2.
They will eat you forever. That's the like we talk about that a lot. Oh, there's that 1 point here or there that you always want back. We'll say that on the webcast. And like, oh, that's one they're gonna want back.
Of course.
That's one that they're gonna want back. Because in a low scoring game like that with the situation which is good as it, but my point is that Infamous, and I talked to Travis about this, I don't think they've looked better in recent memory. and he thinks this is the best team they've ever put out there. You've played for Infamous before. You've been playing against them or with them forever. What do you think their chances are for these last two events?
I mean, first of all, I think our team when I was playing with Infamous was pretty damn sweet. We had a squad. We did win the Chicago event in 2010. We had a team. Nicky Cuba leading the way. That guy's a beast. But
he is a beast.
I think they look really good. Yeah, I mean, I think they look really good. They have a good organization. They're definitely a team that can show up and win if everybody's clicking and everybody's playing well. You know, they have a good mix of attackers that are down to get dirty and get up front and, you know, play in your face paintball. And then they have great closers, you know, and I think guys like Cody and Callie are playing some of the best paintball they've ever played. Harrison is stepping up and really coming into his own. You know, he's a threat. Like they have a lot of weapons. They have the ability to contend and compete for sure. And I love what Travis has done with Infamous. It's amazing what he's done with the brand, what he's done with everything about that team. It's inspiring. You know, that's kind of the dream for teams, right? Be able to build a brand and support yourself and you know, do all these really cool things and field a competitive team. So.
And when I had Meter on, I talked about this too. I've talked about this with Travis and the different, I love that. Like, I love what the Dynasty guys are doing. I love the fact they're bringing you and Blake on as owners. You know, I feel like this is sustainability, watching it slowly play out. So I love the fact that, I mean, Travis's quote was like, he didn't mean it as we're only pro paintball, but he's like, we are pro paintball. And it was a longer quote, but the fact that what he's trying to do, kind of saying that, you know, when you have teams like Dynasty, because as we well know, there's two ways to be. You want to be a pro paintball player, or you have two options. You're either a hired gun for a rich guy or you're a poster boy for a company. There's a third way, and that's you kind of start your own thing. You know, you can own your own stuff. You can grind your ass off and be a paintball professional. That's there. It takes a lot of work. And so to see all the work that Travis has put in behind the scenes, to see all the work that Dynasty's been put in behind the scenes, because neither Dynasty nor Infamous has a huge checkbook to just go start writing checks for people. You know, they have to do it a little bit in a more difficult way to be competitive and keep the talent out there. So I just really respect what Travis has done. And I think that it's a really cool thing. But again, you know, they're in the bracket with Thunder, New York Extreme. What do you think about, we talked a little bit about Thunder. What do you think about New York Extreme? You know, because I know everyone has thoughts about New York Extreme, but they played a little bit better at the last event. They finally, you know, they stepped up. They beat the MO
I heard
Kings
it's because
by
they were
2,
wearing New
Revo
Balances.
by 2. Maybe that was it. They lost to you guys by 1, and then they beat Damage by 4, and then lost to Houston Heat by 1 in the quarterfinals. But that was nasty. It took 7th place. I mean, that was a pretty interesting second event for them. They looked a lot better than they have in the past. They don't have Tim Stetzel back. They will have Carl there. We'll see. What do you think?
Yeah. Like I said, I think some of their players started wearing New Balance cleats. That definitely helped change the dynamic of how they maneuver around the field, how they perform. I think also we have practiced them at the events quite a few times in the last 2 years. So we've really helped those guys. We've really helped them get a whole lot better. And Jerry Caro is nasty. That kid can ball. No, all joking aside, it's always fun in games with those guys, but they played good. They played really well. You know, they should have beat Heat. You know, that game at least should have went into overtime. I don't know if I could say they should have beat Heat, but it at least should have went to overtime. You know, they were right there. So you gotta give respect when it's due. And those guys definitely have demanded some respect from the league. They can show up and wreck a good team's day for sure. But still the consistency bug is, you know, that's the ticket right there. Can they be consistent?
No, they can't. They're hot or cold. They're so far from consistent. If consistent is going 2-2 and barely missing Sunday, absolutely, Marcelo, they can be consistent. And if Bo Milo was here right now or Rich was here, they'd be like, well, you're not lying, because that's been their story. But they're trying to change that. They've been working their asses off to change that. They have 2 more events to work with to see if that's actually going to be the case. But it was a good look for them. 7th place was again, and only losing to Heat by 1. And like you said, that again, just pick your sports analogy, man. Whatever other sport you want to talk about that's super hard. But the fact that Infamous could have very well had won that first event, it's that whether it's baseball and you foul tip one, the catcher doesn't catch it on the second strike, that would have been your third, and then you hit the next one over the fence and win the game. Or, golf, you hit that beautiful shot, but then it bounces into the sand and then you have a tough time getting out, where it could have just bounced 1 inch, just one more inch to the other way, and that would have been completely different. So pick your sports metaphor. That's how hard this is out here. And that's the problem with New York Extreme, is they are constantly putting themselves in precarious situations, and it's hard for them to prevail sometimes. Can they absolutely ruin another great team's day? Sure, they beat the Russians before, they beat good teams. But heading into this, so it's Infamous, Thunder, Extreme, Energy, Elite, and Uprising. I think that's actually a really good bracket for New York Extreme. I think that if they show up and play their best paintball on any given day, they can beat any of those teams. It would not surprise me if they made it out. It also wouldn't surprise me if they went 1-3 in that bracket as well, too. It's just, they're so hard to predict. Speaking of hard to predict, Uprising is also in that bracket as well. And I mean, I think New York Extreme is like, other than picking them to go 2-2 and barely miss Sunday, which has been a pretty solid bet for the past couple of years for New York Extreme. With Uprising, they're one of the least predictable teams out there. They've been relatively predictable recently because they have not done well, but historically, with the same starting 5 that they have, I mean, that team has been really good, and they've beaten top teams. They've beaten some of the best teams in the world. But it's just, riddle me this. No one can seem to figure it out. I've asked everyone this, and everyone has the same essential answer, and it's that no one really knows. It just seems to be a motivation thing or training thing, or because when you look at, I mean, what's your opinion? They have the same core starting 5 they've had for a long time. They're missing a guy or here or there, but for the most part, that team's competent as far as threats are concerned, and they just can't seem to put together. It doesn't look like, I mean, it's levels basement to crawl out of. So it doesn't look like Uprising is going to get, relegated, but they have just not looked good this year. What do you think?
Yeah, Matty, I don't know. I used to say about Uprising, it was field dependent. If the field was good for them, they were going to have a good event. I definitely thought they were going to do better the first 2 events, and we actually practiced them this last weekend, and they were playing really well. So, they do a great job of shooting people off the break. They've got a great unified attack. When somebody's coming down one side, there's another body coming from somewhere else as well. They're difficult to predict. I agree. I don't know if I could put my finger on exactly what it is, if it's motivation or what, but they have not showed up this year, so far. And I was surprised because we had James Creek on the show early on, and he was letting me know how much they had been working and how much, effort they've been putting in this season. And so I honestly thought they were going to be doing very well. So, sometimes that's a thing too. Sometimes you try too hard and things don't go your way, that's a thing too. But who knows? I think, again, based off of our, go ahead.
Well, no, I just real quick, I want to throw at you before we move on from Uprising and you get your thoughts in real quick, is if you go back to 2019, I mean, before COVID hit, it had been a string of disappointment for Uprising. They had taken a 17th, a 16th, 13th through, last part of 2018, early 2019. Then at Philly, they took 4th, and then a 15th at Chicago, then a 6th at World Cup in 2019, and then 19th at the start of 2020, and then a 19th, they didn't make it to, World Cup 2021. And then a 19th at the Sunshine State Major and an 18th. They're just so all over the board. And it's essentially the same squad. They don't really have a gigantic chasm in who they're missing. It's essentially been the same guys. So the fact that you could go out and, beat a Russians or an Impact and take a 6th or a 4th, and then barely be able to scrape the bottom of the barrel at the same time. And, talking to their coach, talking to those guys, it's like, they don't seem to be able. I mean, if they could figure it out, they would not be doing it. But it just is. To me, it's one of the biggest puzzles in the pro game right now is why Uprising is so inconsistent.
Yeah, I agree. and again, we just practiced them this last weekend, and they played us really well. So we'll see what they do at this event. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. You could play great in practice or bad in practice. When you show up to the event, that's when you gotta step up. So we'll see.
Okay, so last bracket before I let you go. Heat, Aftermath, X Factor, DMG, AC Dallas. Obviously, Heat with a big victory at the last one, complete redemption from not making Sunday at the first event. Aftermath has been doing nothing but improving throughout the year. X Factor, disappointing for them, sitting at 10th place overall with the 7th and a 9th place, but they haven't been getting blown out for the most part. Here or there. I think actually only one really loss that they had that was really bad overall the entire year, but not where they want to be. And then DMG was terrible on their home turf at the Sacramento event. And then AC Dallas improved a bit the first couple events, but still a rebuilt team. Your thoughts on this last bracket?
Yeah, actually, when you brought up Seattle Thunder being in 5th place and one of those like newer up and coming teams, but before you said Thunder, the first team that came to mind was Aftermath. Because we were talking about, we were talking about, belief and culture and the preparation, and it's solidified in that camp. You know what I mean? It's straight up solidified. Mike Hinman does a fantastic job with bringing that and forging that belief and understanding the process that it takes to win. And we've practiced them quite a bit this year, and they look great in practice. It's definitely, I mean, it is such an improved team from last year and the year before. Night and day difference, to be honest. And I like what they're doing. I enjoy, I'm a fan, of course I'm a fan, that's where I came from. That's the team that I grew up playing with, and I'll always hold that team dear to my heart. So it's good to see them doing the right things and seeing success from it. I thought they played fantastic at the last event. Obviously, you take down the Russians on Sunday, go on, you do lose to Impact, but still a 4th place finish from where they were just 1 year ago is spectacular. So, Heat, X Factor, Aftermath, that's one of those brackets, in my opinion, where, I mean, if Heat or X Factor have a bad game or two, Aftermath can knock one of them out, and so it's going to be interesting for sure. Who were the other two in that bracket?
Well, I think it's interesting because, DMG just got, they played some of the worst paintball I've seen them play at Sacramento, and that's their home field. So we're probably going to see a pretty stout DMG based on what they can field as far as whatever they can muster. We're going to see it at this next event. They're at least going to give it a good old solid try, because they did not look good at their home field, and that's embarrassing. And then AC Dallas did show some signs of improvement as far as the attack was concerned. They didn't really have too much of an attack at the first event, played a little too defensive, but really started to cultivate some threats at that last event. So like you had said that we do think we're going to see, like we've been seeing, lots of points being played potentially on this layout. Obviously they have their, DMG and AC Dallas have their work cut out for them with X Factor, Aftermath, and Heat. I 100% agree, though. If you look at how Aftermath went through that last event, where they started out by losing to Thunder by 2, so it was very frustrating in the beginning, and then they lose to the Russians by 2, so they start out 0-2 in the very beginning of the tournament, and then they come out and they beat the brakes off AC Dallas, and they beat the brakes off of Uprising 8-2, 8-3. And were able to make it to Sunday. Then they play AC Diesel, who I feel on paper probably matched up better than Aftermath in that matchup, but they beat them 6-4 and moved on. Then they beat the Russians by 5. That was a huge statement. And again, you could argue maybe the Russians ran out of gas because they're only running with 6 dudes. We had talked about that early on in the show.
They did.
And then they go. They ran out of gas, but still, you just still beat the Russians by 5, which is totally a statement.
For sure.
That's a huge statement. And then you move on into the semifinals, and they did lose to Impact, where Aftermath looked to finally run out of gas and get beat up a little bit, and they only put 2 points on the board. 7-2 is that score. So, but that was to me, the fact that they showed up and lost the first 2 games and then had redemption by beating up on the Russians on Sunday, I felt like that was an incredible look for Aftermath, and it really boded well for them. And it was individuals too, because look, we can sit here and talk about forever, oh, the team like this and here was a score of that. But when you go back and watch that game and you see that individually that they are developing threats across the field that are important. And when you see guys like Unger who played like dog shit in the practices leading up, so much so that when I go talk to, Mike and I'm like, how does the team look? He's like, I told Unger no more interviews with Matty. He needs to focus on his game. He's gonna be lucky to be playing on this team. Like he was horrible. And then he shows up and plays the way he did. I was impressed, man. His feet to the fire in a really tough spot. And that you had a lackluster performance in practice, and then show up and play that good. And then just in general on the Snake side with the injury to Tim this year, like I like that they don't really have like their go-to Snake guy yet, but they've had multiple guys stepping up over there. And you got Pinky and you got Troy, you got all these different threats. You got, Keys coming out of the backfield, guys trying to reform their games to be more diverse in their attack, guys that had played more defensive in the past. So I totally agree with you. I think that they have done nothing but get better. It was a really good look to take those losses and emerge and make it all the way into the semis. So I'm just wondering now, against Heat and X Factor with the scrappy DMG and AC Dallas getting better too, like where are they going to be at? What are we going to see out of Aftermath here at this event?
Yeah, I agree. I think the way the schedule lines up will be interesting too. Like if Aftermath plays Heat their first game, or is it their second game? Because sometimes you catch one of those top tier teams first match. They don't have time to scout you, figure out what you're doing, game plan a little better. Sometimes those teams have a little better chance of winning that first game. But again, we practiced them, this last weekend, and they're playing fantastic. They're playing great paintball. So, I remain with what I was saying. I think that could get interesting between those three teams, as far as who's going to come out of there.
If you had to pick as far as making the wild card round out of all of these teams, I mean, you can go with your favorites in each bracket, but I'm just wondering if you think, all these teams we mentioned, you have the top tier teams, Impact, Damage, Russians, Dynasty, Infamous, Thunder, Heat, and Aftermath. But then you have Revo, Diesel, Extreme, X-Fact. Only 4 of these teams are going to be moving on into the wild card round. It could get chaotic. Who knows? Maybe it could be one of those top seeds. But just based on, like you said, you practice some of these teams. I know you watch more tape than almost anyone on planet Earth. When I go up against guys that I've been watching tape against, because I got to create all this content, and we're working on a 4 Sundays documentary type thing right now. You're going back and watching all this stuff, but I mean, you grind, you watch a lot of stuff. So I know some of these players and teams more than they know that you know them, because that's what you do. So as one of my guys that does watch a lot of tape, I got to ask you, who do you think dark horses as far as emerging out of this? Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, okay, so that's kind of loaded there. Are we just assuming the top 8 are the ones? What are we assuming as far as that goes with these brackets? So
I loaded it on
Group A.
purpose. Let's just say Group A. Give me
right.
assuming that. Do you think the Impact or Damage will stumble? So 2 questions in each of these, and then we'll sign off. Going through the brackets, Impact and Damage. Do you think one of those 2 teams? We'll leave out your bracket as far as stumble, because I know you're not going to say that Dynasty's going to stumble. I will ask you the other question, but out of Revo, Outlaws, and Level,
sure.
I mean, obviously, I feel like that one's a no-brainer for you. Do you think either Impact or Damage could potentially stumble again? Damage stumbled at the last one. Do you think they could stumble again?
I don't think so. I don't think it happens 2 events in a row. They're too experienced. And have too much talent, good coaching. I don't think that team stumbles 2 events in a row. I can't put my money there. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And then Revo, Outlaws, Level. Revo, no-brainer, right? You think out of those 3?
Revo, yeah, no-brainer to me on that. Hate to say it that way, to be honest, but I just am not seeing enough from those other 2 teams yet. Is what it is.
I think yet is and then prove us wrong. I always say that to guys that are like, oh, you don't believe in us? I'm like, it's not that I don't believe in you. It's just that there's 20 teams, man. Prove me wrong. Like you have to show up and prove that you can climb the mountain before I'm going to be like, well, he climbed the mountain that one time. So let's move on to the next one. Diesel, Ironman, ML Kings. who's going to get the nod there?
So you're assuming us and Russians move on.
I'm assuming.
It's going to be a tough bracket, but
well, no, if I ask you that, you're just going to say, look,
yeah.
well, Matty, there's no way we're stumbling for sure. And rightfully so, you should say that. But now that you're all healthy.
Yeah, I'm going to go Diesel. I think they're poised. They're a threat for sure. I mean, it's going to be a battle with those guys. So, and you know, ML Kings too. Ironman right now, I feel like they're in a weird spot. You know, I feel like they're in a weird spot. They've had the change of roster. They're trying to find their new identity, in my opinion, and it might take a little bit of time for them to really come into their own again. Again, they have a good process. They have a good situation. They you know, I think they do have that belief amongst players there, but just not seeing it from them so far either. And ML Kings have been a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to choose AC Diesel for sure. I feel like that's a little bit of an easier one too.
For these next two, to make it less easy, because I know you would probably go with Extreme and X Factor, between Energy Elite and Uprising and DMG and AC Dallas, who do you feel has a better chance of earning that wild card spot or doing really well in their bracket? Energy Elite or Uprising, DMG, AC Dallas. So I'm pretty sure you picked New York Extreme.
Hold on, let's rewind, because I wasn't going to choose Extreme. Actually, I was going to choose Uprising in that bracket.
Okay, then we'll explain your reasoning. I just thought you would go with Extreme based on their upward trajectory, but you did just practice Uprising. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's actually more of Extreme. I feel like I'm rolling dice at the craps table, and their hand just got really hot, so I feel like it's time to pull my money back. You know, because now it might get cold, and then the casino's going to start to win.
All your numbers just hit. You're like,
the numbers hit.
Can I pull down the 6 and the 8? All right, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to follow it up with a similar performance. Now they might. They definitely might. I could be totally wrong there. But we did just practice Uprising, and like I said, they looked really good against us. I mean, they gave us a really good look. I got to say, they gave us a good look, and it's tough at practice. You know, you're not sure if you're bouncing people or what, but they were everywhere. And they did a really good job of shooting on the break. So, yeah. Anyway, so if that's the case, so what are the teams that I'm choosing between now?
Well, you're going to pick Uprising then between Energy and Uprising. So we'll move on to this last one. Because I'll put X Factor in there because they're in the bottom 3. But if they're in there, I'm assuming between X Factor, DMG, and AC Dallas, you would pick X Factor. So I'm just going to take X Factor out of it. Between DMG and AC Dallas, who puts up a harder fight in the lower part of that division?
DMG. Got to go with the experience there. They've had the same group for a long time. Got to go with the experience there. But I don't know about that either. I mean, so are you thinking that I'm choosing Heat and Aftermath to come out of that bracket?
No, is that
why you took?
Initial question was the last 3. You know, so if between X Factor, DMG, and AC Dallas, of those bottom 3, who would have the best performance? Yeah, just how it is on paper. But I mean, we already kind of talked about that bracket, but I feel because Houston Heat still has a giant chip on their shoulder, and I feel that they're done nothing but, they had a big practice. So I don't think Heat's going to falter like they did. I mean, Heat is another team that is a little hot or cold. It would not surprise me if Heat didn't do amazing at this event and then rolled up and won World Cup, because they've done that in the past, fighting out of the wild card bracket. But I don't see that really happening. I don't see that. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think Aftermath's only going to get better. And then X Factor is, again, ranked 10th overall. With the performances that they've had, they have not been bad at all. They just are, again, like we've been talking about how difficult this game is, they're right on that edge. So that being said, I think we're probably going to see a really solid, good look from Heat, Aftermath, and X Factor. So to me, it's going to be up to DMG and AC Dallas. That's why I kind of phrased the question that way. DMG and I agree with you. I think DMG, based on the embarrassment that they had, I really like those guys too, man. I really like DMG, but they played absolutely terrible on their home field in front of all their friends and family. Like, that is, if that's not going to motivate you to roll up to this next event and smash people and put the work in between past couple weekends and now, I don't know what else possibly would.
Mhm.
And they have been together for a while. So, and they've had some changes in the rosters, but yeah, I really do feel that that team does have some threats that are emerging. I feel that individually they've been getting better, but they just could not put it together in that last event. And they were really scratching their heads. So I think we're going to see them staying, showing up early and staying late and really doing the work for this next event, so that they can show up at a major and perform better, because that's a tough bracket. If AC Dallas continues to get better, we'll see. But anyway, Marcello, thank you so much. Really appreciate sitting in with me. I'm really happy that everything worked out with you and Dynasty, and that we're going to see Marcello Margott as a core member of Dynasty from here on out. Any last thoughts on that kind of before we sign off? Because I know we kind of started with that. I think that's some really big news for the sport, to be honest. Like Dynasty getting you and Blake dialed in. I mean, this is the equivalent. I mean, you guys just took, coming off a World Cup victory. I know the first event wasn't what you guys wanted to have, and you guys are scratching heads and lose Tyler. But now Dynasty signing you and Blake essentially to long-term contracts, with how Blake just played in Sacramento and how well you've been playing recently. Again, coming off the third with the injury depleted lineup, I feel like this is really big news for the game. So your last thoughts real quick on that.
I don't think I have anything crazy exciting. I mean, it's like I said, there's a lot of stuff that the team is working on that will be rolled out, that we're not quite ready to discuss yet, but I'm just excited to keep working, keep the momentum going. Again, getting our players back, getting Dalton back healthy is huge. And being able to put all of our focus on winning events and put all the other stuff aside, kind of calm down a lot of the outside noise too of what's going on with Dynasty. Is this the end of Dynasty and all the stuff you see on the internet, all the nonsense? It's nice to put some of that to rest and be able to just focus on competing with the guys. So, yeah, just stay tuned and keep following what's going on. And you guys will see some cool stuff.
Again, as a fan, never having played for the team, but just been grinding against Dynasty for years. Like, it's awesome. And yeah, I really am expecting big things from you guys in the squad. Also, check out Play the Game podcast on all the different podcatchers that you possibly can get. I love what you guys are doing there too. And BKI, any clinics coming up that you got before the end of the year? I don't know if those are sold out or anything going on before we sign off.
Yeah, Matty, I've actually been doing a lot less clinics, and I've been doing a lot more private practices and like closed practices and working directly with teams. And so I do have a few weekends available if your team is interested in having me come out and basically host a practice and put you guys through a high level practice session. I've been kind of doing more of that than the open clinics, though I have done a few open clinics this year. But again, just I really am finding enjoyment in working closely with teams and helping build the culture there and helping teams prepare for events. So if you're interested, feel free to message me on any of the social media apps. I think they have it here on Go Sports. It's the @Marcello Margott. But yeah, that's about it, Matty.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for sitting in with me. It was a great conversation about the upcoming event, which is going to be going down here leading into this next weekend. So excited to see the battles at the third NXL Major event before we get into the World Cup. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm Matty Marshall. Thank you, Marcello. And I'll see you guys next time.